Traders, how are you? Marcello here, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. I want to remind you guys, since you did ask me to do the podcast is available for you. You can go to the blog. We post the recaps every week on Sunday morning-ish, 10, 11 in the morning, Eastern time, New York time. For those of you guys in the Philippines and in Asia, we publish it at the same time, your time, right? But if you want to download the podcast to listen instead of watching the video, you can go to Spotify or iTunes or even the website, and then there you can go ahead and download the podcast to be able to listen to it, okay? Other than that, don't forget to subscribe here to the channel. If you're guys watching on Instagram, don't forget to share with your friends if you guys want to learn a little bit more about the markets. And also, don't forget to email your questions with the hashtag AskMarcello, okay? Overall this week, Monday, we had the U.S. markets fall. More than anything was because the U.S. and China placed new taxes on each other's goods. Argentina as well imposed capital controls, a new worrying sign for the emerging market risks. Tuesday, U.S. stocks were down big with the Dow, one of the most important, if not the most important exchange in the United States, going down 400 points with new tariffs going on Chinese goods, thanks to Trump and the Trump administration. Wednesday, U.S. stocks rose 1% from encouraging data from China, which kind of, let's say, leveled down a little bit the worries about the whole world economy going into a recession. Thursday, U.S. stock indices poised a 1% rise across the board, as U.S. and China said that they're going to have higher level talks in a month, raising hopes of the reversal of the escalating trade war, which obviously has affected economic growth. Overall for the week, the Dow is up 1.49%, the S&P 500 up 1.81%, and the Nasdaq is up 1.76%. In overseas market news, overall the most important item I would say is Hong Kong. They had their best performance of 2019 on Wednesday with a rise of nearly 4%. Overall for the week, their exchanges are up 2.6%. I should say their exchange, not exchanges, are up 2.6% for 2019. Biggest winners here are the property developers that were battered by the massive protests throughout the entire region. And in good news, they did the whole reason why the manifestations and the riots and everything started was because a new bill that they wanted to do about the extradition of people who are guilty of a crime in Hong Kong being able to be extradited to China. Well, supposedly they are completely doing away with it. So I don't think that's going to stop the protests, but you know that it'll probably calm them for now. Other than that, European markets are mostly higher this week. Italy, the biggest winner, 2.93%. Latin American exchanges, the Bovespa is the biggest winner here, the Merval in Argentina. After about 50-60% drops the last 3 weeks, they had an increase of 12.40%. Africa and Middle Eastern markets, the biggest losers, Nigeria, the biggest market in Africa, 1.4% negative. Egypt is the biggest winner at 0.66% positive. Asia and Australian markets are mixed, with the second China up 3.95%, and the biggest loser in Asia, the Far East, the Sensex in China. Big news in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency space. We had a situation where Mu Changjun, the deputy director of the People's Bank of China, which is a central bank of China, payments department, they essentially said that they're launching their own digital currency, which is going to be very similar to the Facebook's Libra coin, that's going to be able to go across all major payment platforms, including WeChat and Alipay. WeChat is kind of like WhatsApp. If you guys don't use WhatsApp, it's like a text messaging system, and then with Facebook combined. So think of it that way, or Instagram combined. All that in one that's WeChat. Alipay is kind of like Amazon, but they're more, I would say, bigger in terms of services, but not bigger overall as a business, right? So Alipay is another one that's exclusive to China or more in the Asian region. So they're claiming development to be able to go ahead and protect the country's foreign exchange sovereignty and commercial applications as cryptocurrencies continue to expand. Bitcoin for the week is up 7.44%, 10,269.90. In financial and banking news, Argentina's international dollar and euro denominated debt fell to a record low on Monday. Elections are in 7 weeks. Macri, which is the current president that was voted in 2015, voted on removing the controls that were placed in the economy and also the currency, normalizing the economy, and eliminating all those barriers, let's say, to entry. Well, he unfortunately had to put new controls on the peso, their currency, due to the fact that it dropped 25% since the primary election last month. And now exporters are going to be limited to 5 days to be able to repatriate. That's a big word. Repatriate foreign currency, and institutions are going to need to authorize the bank to buy dollars in the foreign market. Number of negative yielding bonds in the euro area expanded in August to 49.51% from 12%, just 12% in January. Now, a very high amount, like I mentioned, 49.51% are negative yielding bonds. So literally you have to pay them so they can borrow you money. And these are investment grade bonds. So this is like the good stuff, the stuff on the top shelf, the cookie jar. Other than that, the euro plunged to a 60-month low on Monday, with the pound from the UK tanking on speculation of a new UK election in October. This is because of the impact of the US and China's trade war. And also I mentioned to you guys the indicator, I would say one of, quote unquote, the most important indicators for a recession, and that's when the short-term bond interest rates go up and the long-term bonds, more than anything the 2 and the 5 year, when they invert. So the longer-term bonds are lower, the interest rate, than the shorter-term bonds. So the longer-term bonds go low, and then the shorter bonds go up, and they invert. In my opinion, right now, this isn't as big a deal as it was before, due to the fact that what's happening now, since we have so much negative yielding debt, everybody's pouring their money into the dollar, and that's what's causing the inversion. You can already see this week the inversion actually went a little bit less. So just wanted to, I like to give you guys these tidbits, and let me know in the comments if you guys like it as well. If you're listening on the podcast, you guys can go to YouTube or my Instagram, Marcello Arrambide English, and leave me a comment to let me know if you guys like it. If you guys are even listening on Instagram now, I post these on Instagram as well, because I do like for you guys to kind of learn how to put all these dots together, right? Because it's important that you guys learn how to be able to see what's actually happened rather than what the news is saying. Because in my opinion, the news isn't really reporting the reality of the situation. We can go back, for example, to the Brexit. All the news in the UK was saying that they were going to stay. The Trump election, 99.9% chance that Hillary was going to win. Doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. Again, I want to remind you guys, never going to get political, whether you love Trump, love Obama, hate Obama. Black, white, yellow, purple, doesn't matter. I'm just going to give you guys the facts so you guys can learn how to put these dots together, okay? And the yield inversion is actually lessening this week. For commodities, crude oil futures, the U.S. crude is up 2.60% at 56.53. International crude, which is called Brent, is up 1.79% at 61.51. And oil is still down over 7% this month. Oil prices fell over 2% on Tuesday due to the fact that OPEC and now Russia are actually going to increase their output due to the trade war. Precious metals for the week also, gold is down 0.86% to 1507. It's actually up 19% in 2019 at the end of this week, peaking at 1,555.07. The highest since 2013. Silver is down 0.66% to 1832. It did get over $19. I don't know if you guys remember that video that I did about how I was trading silver. You guys remember? If you guys are following me here on Instagram and YouTube as well, how I talked about the rise, just beautiful, beautiful run to the upside. UK lawmakers delivered a blow to the Prime Minister Johnson's Brexit strategy with the vote aimed at delaying the country's exit from the EU. The failed attempt is calling a slap general election on the 15th of October. And now the options that Boris Johnson has is to either bypass legislation requiring a 2/3 majority or doing he could call a vote of no confidence to start his own government. In economic news, Eurozone's manufacturing recession continues for the 7th month in August. Risk of recession is rising in Germany as well, which, remember, is Europe's largest and most important economy, the 4th largest in the world. Factory orders fell 2.7% in July, intensifying the industrial slump, pushing the economy and the government towards a government stimulus to help the economy. And the ECB, which is the European Central Bank for the Eurozone, is also further pushing monetary easing. If you guys are new or don't know what monetary easing is, it just means massaging the economy. Just so you guys know. Basically with debt and just literally tactics that in the long run really aren't going to work that well. U.S. manufacturing activity fell for the first time in 3 years in August, raises market fears of a recession. The U.S. now joins the Eurozone, Japan, the U.K., and China, having an experience of contraction in the factory activity. Hong Kong business activity fell since the most in 2008 in the month of August, obviously due to the situation with the protests. In corporate news, Google agrees to pay a $170 million fine, says the U.S. FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, on Wednesday, saying that YouTube broke the law when it knowingly tracked and sold ads targeting children. But we're going to trust them with our information, aren't we? Right before the new tariffs went in on the $112 billion worth of Chinese goods, Target told their suppliers that they are not going to accept any cost increases. This is going to be very interesting what happens, because if they don't pass that on to the customer, then something else needs to happen in terms of where they produce the material, and also the cost isn't going to be passed to the customer as well. That might be a new standard in U.S. retail. In trade news, Chinese Commerce Ministry lodges a complaint against the U.S. in the World Trade Organization. They're obviously complaining about the $300 billion in Chinese exports. Of course, they're not complaining about all the intellectual data that they stole from the U.S., which is what the U.S. is claiming they're doing that for, as retaliation, because the Chinese keep stealing the intellectual property of the U.S. XAG, which is a Guangzhou-based drone maker, combined with the pharmaceutical firm from Germany called Bayer Crop Science. Bayer is the company that bought the ever so trusted Monsanto. They did a drone swarm operation where basically they attacked what's called the army worm, which is a pesticide, not a pesticide, insecticide. What's the word in English? I'm thinking of the word in Spanish. I always do the Spanish recaps first. It's funny how now I think Spanish first. It's think of it like a bug that eats the plants, right? That's not the right word for it, but I think you guys understand what I'm saying. So this operation, or the insecticide that they're spraying, which has decimated agriculture in China, claims to have a mortality rate of up to 98%. Amazon engineers are testing new scanners that can identify individual human hand for purchases, unlike fingerprint scanners or even putting, those automated aisles that they have now. What they're going to do is they're doing the depth, the geometry, and taking, I guess, since they're tracking everything else and listening to our I was going to say listen to our sex like Apple is doing. They now want to sit there and measure your hand and every single ounce of your hand to be able to track that, so they can do the purchases automatically. And that technology should be rolled out next year. In investment news, Huawei has gained more than 50 commercial 5G contracts globally, ahead of Nokia's 45 and Ericsson's 24, ahead of its closest competitors, which are those two. And Europe is becoming a key market as several countries are deciding what to do about their new 5G rollout. And Huawei is already blocked in the US, Japan, and Australia, because the US is saying, obviously, that the Chinese government is using it for intel and also other bad things that the US is saying that they're going to use it for. In November, Colombia is going to start a new $23.2 billion holding company comprising of 19 firms that the government owns, including banks focused on agriculture and exports, to try to boost efficiency and overall portfolio management. Conveniently, all those slush funds that go to the politicians that just happen to be government owned. Taking full advantage of the decline in benchmark interest rates for the first time ever, Apple, Deere, and Disney are actually going to issue 30-year bonds at under 3%. It's the first time for the corporate debt market, and they're selling up to $7 billion in debt, the first time since 2017. And essentially, it's because the interest rates are so low, they can offer it at that low price, and there's a very low cost to finance that debt. It does provide a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but these big-name corporations like Disney and Apple, which aren't going to go bankrupt tomorrow, right, gives a relatively safe alternative to other investments like government bonds, like the ones in Europe that just happen to want you to pay for them for the privilege of borrowing them money. The Trump administration releases a formal plan to return Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to private hands after more than 11 years in government control. These two firms back over 50% of all U.S. mortgages. This represents a major reversal in what both parties, Democrats and Republicans alike, were saying, but it marks a big win for people who bet against that deal. In international events, Hurricane Dorian, the strongest storm with Cat 5, winds of over 156 miles an hour, devastated the Bahamas. Now, I believe when you guys watch this, it's going to cover right around the Carolinas. My heart goes out to all of you guys. As a businessman, you should go buy property in the Bahamas, but give them a fair price so they can, get back up. Unfortunately, the Bahamas, $9 billion economy, 60% of it is tourism, which is now absolutely decimated. In unusual facts for the week, after 33 years, Japanese fishermen are now starting to hunt whales again commercially. Commercially. Some are saying that it's a custom that goes back centuries, while as some environmentalists say that shouldn't happen. Lamborghini is set to unveil its first hybrid car in the Frankfurt Motor Show in Germany next week, called the Sion Bolt of Lightning, which is going to be the fastest car produced and the most powerful, they say, at 217 miles an hour. There's only going to be 63 of them made, so if you happen to have a few $1 million in your bank account, go ahead and buy one because they're fancy. Samsung foldable smartphones are going to go on sale in South Korea on Friday. We're going to be at the Traders Fair in South Korea on the 20th of September. We're also going to be at the Traders Fair in Singapore in October for those of you guys that want to come and check us out. Learn about futures trading and why Forex is horrible compared to other markets like futures, which are more regulated. Soon they're going to sell the $2,000 phone in the US, UK, France, Germany after the South Korean launch. U.S. EPA and NHTSA are reportedly trying to submit for final review, removing the state's, more than anything, California's ability to be able to set its own vehicle emission standards, even though a lot of automakers are willing to comply with a lot of the individual state mandates. Facebook is also starting its own dating service in the U.S. on Thursday. Users are going to be able to integrate their Instagram account with the Facebook dating profile. So now instead of a DM on Instagram, you can send a DM on the new Facebook dating service. Former Zimbabwe Prime Minister and President Robert Mugabe died on Friday at age 95 at a hospital in Singapore. He served as the president of 30 years. He's known by some for having ending the white minority rule in Zimbabwe in the 1980s. And for others, he's known as destroying the economy, as before he was in power, they were a major food exporter and they didn't produce enough food to feed themselves and became a food importer after he became in power. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe and we'll see you next week.